Hey, good morning. Thanks for joining us with Don't Be Foolish for Long-Term Care with RIA Advisors. I'm Danny Ratliff with Richard Rosso. We appreciate you guys joining us this Saturday morning. Lot to get into. Very hot topic. Seems to be something that we get quite a bit of questions surrounding. And so just wanted to spend some time this morning. Typically, this is going to be a really open format. We do have a little bit of a presentation, but it is simply educational in nature. There's no dangling carrot at the end of this. It is really just to give you guys some ideas on what you should be looking at or maybe not, how to view this type of product, and how you can best utilize this for you and your family. So we're also going to be taking questions. So yeah, you do have any questions throughout, please go to the Q&A, ask them there. When we get through with this, we will certainly address those, as many as we can. And then if you have any other questions or there's any other topics you'd like for us to address, please go to realinvestmentadvice.com or let us know in the survey right after this the Candid Coffee this morning. So we are Clarity Financial, doing business as RIA Advisors. We are a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So please take this information as purely educational, no recommendations here, but just want to arm you guys with as much information as possible. So we're going to jump right in today, talk about what's on the agenda. Rich, lay it out.
Yeah, well, just a few topics. And to Danny's point, we're going to make this as easy as possible because this is not a pleasant topic, but I'm glad you're all here. Shows that you all are thinking longer term. And I hope the one thing about long-term care is you never need it. But there's going to be a point in your life you might need it just temporarily, and you need to understand how to mitigate the risk. So what is long-term care? Why is the planning important? Matter of fact, planning is most important. What are the cost challenges? And how do you create a long-term care cost plan? Because the first thing we hear, Danny, long-term care, oh, no, cost prohibitive. Well, we have a strategy for you to take a look at, to look at it more practically, and to decide whether you need it or not.
I think one big misconception is what is actually long-term care? What's it technically covered by? I mean, we hear a lot of conversations around, oh, I have long-term care. We have Medicare, or they have some type of other insurance that potentially maybe have a long-term care rider. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But long-term care is technically somebody who needs some personal care supervision. Generally, it's associated with aging. Now, not always. I mean, we do see people who, 40s, 50s, 60s, a little bit younger, who do need care from time to time. And so some of the conditions that may require it, obviously head injuries, strokes, cancer, Parkinson's, heart disease, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, dementia. Dementia is certainly a much, much bigger, portion of it now this day and age as people are living longer. We do see the effects of that more frequently. But really, it's when you cannot perform two activities of daily living. And so, toileting, transferring, getting out of bed, dressing yourself, eating, these are going to be, what a doctor must certify. So really important. And oftentimes, Rich, we see a lot of people that, still relatively in good shape, but they can't perform two of these.
Temporarily.
That's their aging or body failing them. Yeah. I mean, so certainly a big deal.
It is. And if you don't have to worry about the stress of paying for it to some degree, which is why we're doing this, is to make the stress on you easier, right? Because stress is unhealthy. So severe cognitive impairment, to Danny's point, that's a big issue. That's going to be one of the greatest issues I think generations face, as there's a lot of ways for people to increase longevity, live longer, maybe even healthier physically, but mentally there are some issues. And people that have severe cognitive impairment, maybe it's temporary. I had people that I care about very much that passed, that lived 10 years after with the mental incapacity, even though physically they were healthy. So, and then again, these inability to perform activities of daily living, even if it's temporary, right? You might go through a period of time where you've gone through surgery and that you can't dress yourself for a little bit. So it's just, hey, maybe I can pay for that out of pocket, but if not, and maybe my insurance covers some of it, but not all, then we want to make sure that you understand what long-term care is.
I was saying, I was there 2 years ago when I blew my knee out, where I couldn't do a handful of these things, getting up, getting dressed.
No, you did it. I mean, yeah, you did it.
Not
and
fun.
the thing here is, keep in mind, and we're going to talk about this. If you have a spouse that can assist you through some of that caregiving, that's positive. But I will tell you, the trends are more toward the fact that there are going to be a lot of seniors living alone. And in addition, women outlive men, and they're most likely the ones left behind. And many people are not having children. So the support system is falling apart just because of the nature of the culture and demographics. So long-term care becomes even more important. And I will tell you, this is a field, this is an area that changes constantly to deal with an aging population. So Danny and I do our best to try to stay abreast of costs, innovation, very important, of long-term care coverage. And there's going to be types of long-term care coverage, which we'll talk about.
So, you know, there is a stronger likelihood that people are going to need long-term care. And so we're going to actually talk about those numbers here in a bit in a couple slides. But the cost can be substantial. And this is one of the bigger problems, Rich. I think that people are less inclined because they hear the horror stories. They hear that somebody who started with, you know, $100 payment now has a $600 or $700 payment the older they get. And so this is something, though, that usually we see people when a lot of times they come to us and say, hey, we need long-term care. We're taking care of our parents or loved ones, and it has just become so expensive. And, you know,
and James
they have a long-term care policy.
Right. James Butler just brought this up, but a lot of times men, and we talked about this on the radio show Friday, men don't tend to have the social network women do. I think men are just done with the crap. They just want to isolate themselves. I take it from me. So that's a danger. That's a danger overall. So we have to stay in tune with lifestyle, health trends outside of even the financial planning realm to help you make good decisions when it comes to this process. And yes, we have seen people that live to pay their long-term care insurance because it's gotten so cost prohibitive over the years, but we can't let it go. It's so good that we're in a dilemma. What do we do? You know, get a 20% increase. I had a client that got a 25% increase last year. And she's like, oh my goodness. I said, listen, you're alone. You don't have any kids. We can't afford to let this policy go. We couldn't replace it at your age. So she pays it. But I'll tell you, it's a financial distress. And many
I have a client I have a client in his 80s who, you know, faced the exact same dilemma where, and luckily he has the means to pay for it, but, you know, certainly a burden on cash flow because, you know, it's gone up from a couple $100 to $600 to $700 to $800. Like, oh, we're not going to continue to raise this anymore after this year. But now you're really close to needing it.
Yeah,
and that can be a humongous burden, just like you said.
They do it, generally speaking, now. They'll recycle like every 5 years. And what they're doing is they're twisting it a little bit to say, do you want this simple inflation option? We're going to increase inflation or leave it as it is. In other words, they're going to say, listen, we need to increase because rates of inflation continually go up for long-term care. So it's very tempting for people to say, oh, I'm going to keep it the way it is because then my costs won't go up. But then the reality is these policies are only as good as inflation rider. You know, is how much you're going to keep up with inflation, because we keep a lot of track of inflation for long-term care through Genworth, Kaiser Foundation, some other organizations that show us how, you know, the inflation component is very, very important, unless you're going to fill that inflation gap with your savings. Now that could be done in your plan and maybe you can, but for the most part, they're putting you up against a wall every few years and saying, listen, if you want this inflation rider to continue, your premium is going to go up $100 a month, or you're going to leave it as is. And most of the time, the smart thing to do is to take the rider.
So what about guardrails, Rich? You know, I think this is one of the aspects once you're putting this together. I mean, obviously you're doing, you know, determining if you need long-term care. And we have some clients who are self-insured who still opt to go get long-term care because they want to leave a larger legacy. You see people that really, you know, sometimes just don't want long-term care, but they may need it. So talk about the guardrails. Like, how should somebody determine, kind of start walking down that path to say, this is something I need or don't need?
I'll tell you, the reason that this is thrown in there is for you to understand how many parents are taking care of their children, adult children today. It's at the highest levels it's ever been. Okay. And they sacrifice their own retirement for that. Now, some parents do it in a way where they actually come up with an agreement, very innovative. I have a couple of clients that I work with, they're planning clients, and their daughter is 30 and they have a pretty large property. So they put a shed in the back and she renovated it. It's beautiful. It's like 400 square feet. She lives back there. They live in the fun house. The agreement is that when we get older, you're going to take care of us. You're going to be our caregiver. Now, not many kids are going to want to do that, but a lot of kids are in financial distress. And I'm 30 as a kid, but today, So what I'm trying to help you understand is, listen, it's a tough lesson, but you just cannot put your own situation and financial security in jeopardy. If you want to gift regularly to your children, make sure you add it as a goal in your plan and it fits. In other words, you can do it. And we have people who do that. I have a sick brother. I have my mother. I give them $400 or $500 a month. Okay, let's see how it impacts your situation. Otherwise, you don't want others to cross your financial boundaries. The word no is magical, especially if it's going to put your situation in jeopardy. So that's when you want to create your own financial rules around debt control and savings. And that is going to limit what you can do. And I know it's tough. Listen, I'm not saying it's easy to say no, but I've had older clients. I have had to coach them to tell their children no. Their 40, 50-year-old children, no. You need to contribute to Johnny's college fund. Make her feel guilty. Your plan says it doesn't work. How much money do they all think you got? So that's why I'm throwing this in there. If you want to preserve your finances, you're going to have to put boundaries and say no to more, especially if you're going to look to self-insure for long-term care.
So go a little bit deeper here.
Well, and Rob brought up something about student loans. So if you're, like parents paying for college, but I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about parents now paying for the day-to-day for their children. I mean, taking care of them again. Not just, hey, student loan, yeah, you're right. I don't want to maybe pay for my grandchildren's student loan. I don't want to pay the whole college. Maybe I put a little in, but we're going to the point where adult children, and there are more families taking care of grandchildren than ever before, right? So this is a bigger issue than just, hey, take a student loan because I'm not, you can't subsidize my retirement, but we can subsidize education.
No, I think that's a good point, though, because we do see a lot of people, they basically forego their retirement because they're paying for their kids to go to college, and they don't put that hierarchy in the right place. And so while it's great intentions, but now you've just mortgaged your retirement. You can't go get the loans that you could get right now in retirement. So, you have to be careful. I think that's where it starts, though, Rich. You start enabling and look, there's a lot of people that do it that have the means. That's fantastic, but you have to put yourself first.
You do. And if it fits in the plan for you to do it and you want to do it for your children, God bless you, by all means. So these are rules to also pass on to your kids. How much in mortgage debt? How much in student loan debt? How much in personal unsecured debt? These tenants, I've used these tenants and I still use them. I'll calculate my numbers all the time. And my numbers are much better than these. But what I'm trying to say to you is that it all starts with building wealth and managing debt. And these are guardrails that are tough, but I've gotten these from 25 to 30 years of working with clients who follow these rules and how they built their wealth through ordinary jobs, everybody. I'm not talking about being an engineer or something like that. I'm talking about just working in a factory or whatever it is. So these are great rules to pass to your kids or your grandchildren. So maybe they don't have to ask you for loans, but financial discipline is not easy, especially today.
No, it's not. What are the main types of long-term care? I mean, you and I talk about this on the radio show quite a bit as far as what people need, what we see them utilizing. But run through these bullet points.
Well, I mean, it's not always everybody goes to nursing home. Oh my gosh. No, long-term care doesn't mean that. It's informal care, right? Sometimes family members, friends, neighbors get together. This is the benefit of living in a retirement community. There are resources there. We talked about that on the radio show the other day. Home health care. This is huge. You see a lot of services like, what is it? A place for mom, because dad's already dead. Dad's gone. So there are paid services. You got to do your homework of professional caregivers that can come in, help with household tasks, and leave, right? And that's more popular. Custodial care, aging at home, most popular. And community care. I think this is the future, Danny. I think this is the future where there are going to be communities. And these communities, and they're already set up in Florida. I wrote about them in my book 12 years ago, actually 10 years ago. I wrote about them in my book to say, hey, seniors are going to have to come together, have communal kitchens, communal gardens, and maybe live in smaller trailer type homes, but they're comfortable. And you're seeing a lot of these. They've been around, but they're getting more popular. And they're nice communities. A lot of them are in Florida, where you can buy a place for like $70,000, live in this community, and you'll all engage. And that's great for staying social. So, I mean, I just think that the community care part, especially as we age, is going to be more important because of demographics. I see that and home health care as big futures. Matter of fact, one of the trends Danny and I are following right now is that a lot of plans, a lot of long-term care policies, are looking at bolstering the custodial care or aging at home element, which is the most popular. Because the last thing you ever want to do is maybe go into a nursing home. Because I know that's the first thing we picture, right? When you think of long-term care, you think of nursing home, but you got to get that out of your mind. It's not that. It may be for the last stage, but for the most part, these services may be used before then. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Rich. I think that's what everybody's mind goes to. And long-term care was geared for that years ago. But, we've seen quite a bit of progression with long-term care. 10, 15 years ago, there were hundreds of companies that offered long-term care. Now there's a handful, right? The space has gotten a lot smaller. Actuaries have screwed up numbers. And we're actually seeing, even with traditional long-term care, that they're not, new policies that have been issued, they're not doing the increases as they once did from policies that were bought 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. So there's a lot of changes surrounding that. And that home health care is certainly a big part of it because we are seeing more and more people age in place. The community care, though, is one thing I'm seeing people start to utilize as well, right? The retirement communities, we talked about this yesterday, where you have the ability to kind of progress from one area to the next as, you're progressing through life, your ability to do certain things changes. I think those are pretty nice places, but it's not that old school, kind of stodgy nursing home like it used to be. They're much, much better.
No, and listen, I've researched for clients. Rob brought up on the chat, Del Webb. And there's one up here by we are in Montgomery County. It's beautiful.
1488.
And the houses are really nice. And they have a network. But there are people in there that are 55, 56, and they're living there because of the social element. So it's not, you got to get the old vision out of your head and look at these communities and understand the network and the social aspect that can help you based on those elements of how you obtain long-term care. So again, most of us are going to need this. This is a reality, right? And 52% want to stay in their home. And I get that. Why wouldn't you want to age in place? Versus the last thing you want to do is go to a nursing home. Now, you might go to a nursing home temporarily for rehabilitation. Some part of that's paid by Medicare, very limited in scope. So Medicare does have some nursing care, hospice care element to the process. It's just not as much as you think. So most people, I know, Danny, wouldn't you rather stay at home and try to make your home livable, whatever that last home is going to be? So you got to go through an action process here if you're going to age at home. And we'll talk about what you need to do. If you're in your forever home now, maybe there's some things that you're going to need to do to make it more livable for you.
Yeah, look, long-term care is extremely expensive. Here's some of the costs here. Home health aid services, annual average cost, $50,000, almost $51,000. Average stay, 3.9 years. Total cost, $197,000. Look, we know what the average savings account has in it, Rich. We know what the average retirement plan has in it. And then we talk about what the median has. Man, it's a way different story. So we also know what the typical cash flow looks like, what people are receiving from Social Security. This is a lot of money, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford this, unfortunately. And even some of the plans that maybe look better than others could struggle if there were a significant or a very long stay in some type of facility like this. Go down to the nursing home, $100,000 annually. Now, this is a private room that you have on your own versus semi-private, 88, assisted living, 46. And I know there's a lot of you out there who I'm sure probably looking at these numbers and say, hey, I have my parents in here right now. We're paying a lot more than that because I hear it. I'm hearing $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 all day long. So depends on the facility, depends on where you are, but these numbers can be pretty high.
And so it just brought up, I can't remember, forgive me, but on the chat, that there are limits to how many days. They're trying to expand on the adult daycare or healthcare component as far as number of days. They're trying to gear you more toward staying at home or home health aid services versus nursing home. But this is where the dementia issue hits. I have a really dear person of mine in my life that passed away during the pandemic. That was in a nursing home in Glendale for 10 years because of mental, and he had a private room and we were running out of money. So that when it comes to mental acuity, mental care issues, that's a problem. So these costs are really scary when you look at them on the surface. And again, these costs are going up by, 7, 6 to 8% a year on average. I like people in Texas. So I know what my long-term care plan strategy is. I'm going to walk out into the woods and I'm going to just disappear. Okay.
You and I have actually heard that before. Do you remember that?
A lot. I hear that.
We kind of looked at each other.
I'm afraid to go to the woods because there are a lot of older Americans walking around eating berries. That's my long-term plan. Maybe we should put communities in the woods. That would be a good idea. Erica, start on that.
Well, I don't think the intent is to live out there, Rich.
I know. I'm not going to say what they say. This is a family show.
I get it.
But you know what I mean? They're like,
yeah. So talk a little bit about the misperceptions about payment options, right? I mean, somebody actually just a moment ago asked, what's the time frame in getting rid of assets to attain long-term care? And what they're referring to is Medicaid over, traditional long-term care. But we'll talk about that when we get done here a little bit. But
Medicare's got this very specific rule. You got to have a 3-night admittance to a hospital. Then you have to have this, you have to go through the ADL test. And then they're only going to give you 100 days of skilled care in a nursing home. And a lot of times that's bare bones. In other words, they're going to say, well, you want to stay in this nursing home, but we're going to give you the cost of this nursing home. Oh, gosh. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, using Social Security to pay for long-term care. Now, in some ways, yes, because if you can maximize your benefits or wait until age 70, I have clients that are going to collect $41,000, $42,000 a year. Listen, it's not all of it, but it certainly helps for you to make smart Social Security decisions. But the people who say, I'm just going to use Social Security to take care of it, that's not enough. But it certainly could be part of your arsenal in your plan to maximize Social Security so that it is there, because it is longevity insurance. So, you can't plan to use it exclusively, but it certainly does help. Any kind of guaranteed income when you're in that situation is going to help you. It also takes the burden off your family who might be helping with a financial advisor to manage your variable assets like stocks and bonds, when all I know is, listen, mom or dad's got this guaranteed pension, Social Security, annuity payment. I don't have to manage that. That just comes in and I have to redirect the cash. Yeah, and inflation does have a cost of living adjustment, right? It's been nice. It'll probably be okay this year. So we've had a nice cost of living adjustment. So Social Security is indexed for inflation. So Medicare, again, is not going to be a realistic, it could be part of it, but it's a daily copay after 20 days. So it's going to pay for 100 days, but you're going to pay out of pocket. That's the third consecutive day in a hospital under specific treatment. And it covers skilled care only, not chronic. So if this is a chronic condition and it's not something that's just going to go away, and I'll tell you, if you're going into a nursing home and you're using Medicare, it's most likely not chronic. It's mostly a serious issue. It's not something that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. You're going to need that nursing home care longer.
Planning for long-term care costs, I think, is always a struggle. And, we had a handful of questions, Rich, on somebody saying, well, how do you use long-term care properly, or how do you know how many years you need to buy it, right? And sometimes it's just what's affordable, what can you purchase and not disrupt your full financial plan, but then not have it blown up at the very end because you don't have the funds for long-term care. So you back into a lot of this, but really it's about the resources you have, the support network that you currently have. Can your family take care of you? Do you want your family to take care of you? And then, if something occurs, where do you go? Where do you start selling assets? And the kicker here is, I think it's interesting, is that while this is such a great question, a lot of people, once you get to this stage, Rich, they're not going to be able to make that decision on their own. They're going to have somebody do that for them a lot of times, right? Because sometimes this is onset rather quickly, or things just are not done properly or articulated in a manner where you could do so prior to an illness or dementia kind of onset sitting in. So this is something I think that needs to be discussed. Like you and I talk about within a financial plan, having your estate plan done, having those discussions. And this is something really similar to that estate plan. Nobody wants to talk about dying. Nobody wants to talk about getting sick or getting older. But a really, really important part, because if you have to sell stuff, where do you go first? What makes the most sense? And sometimes your loved ones or caregivers may have different ideas than what your intent was. So you need to really make sure you guys have those conversations. So that's why I think a lot of this is, it's informal and unpaid. We see a lot of people who, go into it. We actually know a lot of people who've retired simply to take care of their parents. And we see that probably more often than people realize. And so what do you think about this, and how can people kind of do a better job preparing for this?
Well, because you never approach the subject. So the event happens and then everybody scrambles. That's how most people do it. I mean, I think that's how most people live their life. Planning is not something you want to do, but you have to. So it's most likely to be a hodgepodge of family coming in from all over the place to take care of you, unpaid people. That's it. I like the RV in the Walmart parking lot when I'm 70. Heck, I'm ready to do that now. Bucky's parking lot, because then I can work in Bucky. So what I'm saying is it's mostly informal and unpaid. And I blame the insurance industry for this. I hate to say it, because there are people who are afraid because they get sold long-term care insurance. They get oversold policies that are with all the bells and whistles, because you're talking to a salesperson. And it doesn't mean there aren't a lot of great salespeople who don't care about it and they don't believe in the product. They do. The problem is how much do you need? And if you can't know that until you do a plan and look at all your assets and figure it out, then you go back, you do the plan, then you go to your insurance person and go, I need X percent policy. I need per day this. And this. So that's the power you have. Well, no, it's just like when you go with a realtor and they go, well, you can afford a house that's like, well, here's my parameter, but you can afford this. No. You got to know your parameters, and the way you do that is through the plan. Right? Right? I mean, how do you just go buy insurance? Like, I'm going to say I need long-term care, and I'm going to go call my State Farm or even RIA insurance and say, I need long-term care insurance. I need, you tell me what I need. Oh, you need like $300 a day, both spouses covered, inflation compounded rider. You need this, you need that. Oh, that's going to be, how much is that a month? Oh, $800. Oh my God. You're flying blind.
And how does somebody know that? Yeah, without doing the plan, without backing into the numbers, instead of just saying, well, okay, let's look at, what is your income? Okay, well, you need this much for this long. You need to be much.
You've got to fine tune it, especially because of how expensive this is. You got to take this block of stone and carve it down to what you need based on everything else going on in your life. A salesman's not going to do that.
Well,
they're going to sell you, and that's fine. They filter.
Yeah, but a lot of times we see somebody says, well, listen, the average average cost of this type of care is going to be, use a number, $6,000 a month. You're going to need this, and it's going to be for this many years. And, going back to those numbers we saw a bit ago, like most people need for 3.9 years. Now, there are people who need it much longer. My my grandfather was in assisted living until from 90 to 99, almost 100. So almost 10 years. I mean, that's a long time. But what they do is they'll say, hey, you need $7,000 or $6,000 in benefits because that's how much it costs. Well, they forgot to factor in your Social Security or your pension or your other income, all of these other assets. So while you may still need long-term care, you may not need as much. So typically, most people are using long-term care to subsidize their long-term care bills and expenses, not to pay the full amount, because you have other assets that are typically doing that, right? Still have income coming in. Your home may have been sold, but you may want some of these to be, used as legacy intent. So, these are all conversations that need to be had. You need to have a very good understanding, which is why, and you're going to hear us in anything we do. We're big believers in the financial plan because it creates a roadmap for you. It's the foundation of everything you have going on. Life's going to change. We'll come back to it. But this will give us a very good idea if you need something like this or how you should use it and how much you would need.
Right.
So here's when you're talking about creating a plan, what do people need to take into account?
Well, your health. Okay. It's not just your DNA if you have any congenital issues, but what kind of health are you in? Right. We use Living to 100. I use 23andMe to give me an idea of my genetic covariant where my family it goes back, right? And it says, based on your DNA, you have a likelihood of this. You have a likelihood of this. And I am going to plan for that, right? I'm going to change my health habits up front. It doesn't mean maybe I'm going to live so much longer, but it does mean that maybe I'm healthier longer. I want to die young, right? I don't want to be wasting away in a hospital bed. And a lot of it has to do with lifestyle. So look at your health profile objectively. I use various metrics to do that. And over the last 8 years, my diet's totally different. So I do that, right? Look at your longevity. This is where, you may want to see how long moms lived and dads lived. The impact of not taking action, because if you're not going to take care of your health or you're not going to address this, what's going to happen? Oh, just go to a Medicaid nursing home. Have you ever seen a Medicaid nursing home? When people go, listen, we got to spend down mom's assets so she can get into a Medicaid. I'm like, you hate your mom? I mean, these are not pleasant places. Then you want to estimate potential costs of care, and a good financial planner or advisor is going to keep track of the information and the trends and help you estimate it. And then this most important, create a hierarchy of spend down to figure out how much coverage you actually need. Get to the bottom line number of how much coverage you're going to need. So it's a process.
So this is, talking about the comprehensive financial plan, but then really understanding the options that you have out there. It used to be, it was just the traditional long-term care policy, kind of like your insurance you have now on your car or, your home. You pay for it, you don't use it, you lose it, right? And so where you're paying for it, you may never see anything out of it. You may pass before you actually need coverage. Those premiums are just gone. Now, one thing we're seeing is more hybrid policies, and those are actually getting a lot more probably affordable, easier to qualify for. Underwriting is not as strict. And then on the other side of it, we also understand exactly what you're paying for and exactly what you will get out of it, which is a really big deal when you hear the horror stories of them raising, the premiums over time. And a lot of times it's a considerable amount. So life insurance long-term care coverage or long-term care rider is becoming a lot more popular. And we would call those a hybrid policy. There are also some annuities that have long-term care riders. Not as big of a fan of those, but sometimes if you can't qualify, they don't have underwriting. That may be a way to get around that. But,
they may allow you to tap.
Policies.
Yeah, they might allow you to tap. Like, in other words, just in case of an illness, or you're able to access that money without penalty, 10% withdrawals penalty. So, but to your point, yeah. But yes, the industry is getting more creative. The insurance industry is getting more creative, right? And then you got to look at your underfunding options. I'm going to take required distributions from IRAs, systematic annuity withdrawal, money not needed for retirement income. Maybe I can liquidate some things. Maybe I can downsize, put that money away. These are kinds of things that part of the hierarchy of getting to the dollar amount you need per, like, and then we really look at it as coverage per day. Yeah. So say you need $150 to $200 a day. Well, how much of that can you subsidize by downsizing? How much can you do with your investments, Social Security, pension, retirement income? Then I've got a gap. Now, spouse health. You're married to someone who's 10 years younger than you, female, good health. She's probably going to outlive you. If you passed, say, and you use the resources, does she have resources? If she doesn't have resources, do you need to just insure her? Because most insurance people are going to want to insure both. Maybe one, you say, listen, I'm going to be very modular. And then it becomes more affordable because you've carved it down to what you actually need based on your holistic situation.
Well, listen, basically almost every time, Rich, if you're looking at a couple, it's a husband and a wife, you're probably going to say, well, the wife really needs it more than the husband. If you're only going to have one person who's going to, be able to afford or qualify for it, generally speaking, that's the case. Now, not always, but a lot of times. And so it has to be somebody who sits down with you, gets to know, your scenario, your health, understand your lifestyle, what you guys, longevity looks like. And then you start backing into those numbers and determine, what's the best option to go and how you go about achieving that. So yeah, lots of different coverages now though, which is great. I mean, people have options that they never had before, Rich.
Here's what you want to consider, right? You just want to go through yourself, high blood pressure, diabetes, type 2. I mean, these are things though that are not congenital. These are lifestyle issues. Tobacco user, right? These are things you can actually improve. But you want to understand the most important about this is getting an assessment on your health. And sometimes that's tough because you might like sitting around the couch every day. You might not feel like, exercise is for you. I'm too old, right? You got to break down these barriers and realize you don't have to go out and run a marathon. You got to go out and get active, being more active. So this is where Living to 100, Dr. Peel, life expectancy calculator can help you. Living2100.com. Check it out. Take the test. See what your longevity is. It's got a lot of lifestyle questions. He's one of the experts at aging and has created this calculator that we use. Do some of the tests. Listen, there are so many new diagnostic tests that are going to come out. MRIs, full blood chemistry that can detect cancer before you even know it, right? You have the tendency to Gallery.
That's amazing.
Yeah, these are not cheap, but over time, these diagnostics are going to be affordable. And when they are, this proactive technology is going to increase your longevity, increase your health, which means that maybe ironically, your long-term care costs will go down because you're healthier, right? You may have instances where you need daily care at home, but you avoid the nursing home. But this, Danny, is very important. And I have a plan. I have the hybrid plan through Nationwide, right? So I pay premiums in to it I buy a certain amount of coverage. If I don't use this coverage, then my premiums go to my daughter, right? So the one issue we always have about long-term care insurance is, well, it's used, if you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah. So I don't have that issue. I can go ahead and leave that to my daughter. But what's cool is a lot of plans are these reimbursement plans, not indemnity plans. And these are a heck of a lot easier. I have an indemnity plan. So maybe you want to go through the differences of these because this is going to be important of how much hassle you're going to put on your children possibly and the stress on yourself.
Yeah, and so the indemnity plans versus non-indemnity or / reimbursement plans are just really what it boils down to is that if you get a note from your doctor saying you can't perform 2 activities of daily living on the indemnity plan, then your carrier is going to, or insurer is going to start paying you those benefits that you discussed. So let's say your benefits are $5,000, but you're only spending $4,000. Great, you're still getting the full $5,000. You're not having to send them receipts. They're just going to start sending them. You use the funds as you deem fit. On the non-indemnity or reimbursement plans, you're going to have somebody who's going to go in and give a receipt for each and every bill and expense that you have. And so it may not pay all the benefits out if you're not spending all of it. Most of the time you are, but it is cumbersome and somebody has to go through and actually divvy that up each and every month. So we talked about a lot of times clients, they come to us and say, hey, we really need to look at long-term care. We didn't think we wanted it or needed it, but I'm seeing it now with my mother. Or now a lot of times they'll say, man, and I do not want one of these plans. You have to send in a receipt for everything because it is a chore. I'm spending one Sunday a month just gathering everything, making sure I submit everything properly. And granted, it gets easier over time, but it is still a pain in the rear. So if you have the option, sometimes, I've seen it where we've applied for multiple plans at once, and maybe the indemnity plan denies somebody, but the non-indemnity picks them up. It's still better to have coverage than not. However, if we could choose, we'd want the indemnity plan all day long. So that's another point too, Rich, is that a lot of times we will have somebody who, apply for multiple plans at one time, because then if you're denied by one and picked up by another, you don't have to disclose that you were denied. But if you go try to, get one policy and then they deny you and you say, okay, I'm going to go to the next carrier. Well, now you have to submit that you've been denied by somebody, and your chances of getting approved are going to be, they're going to diminish a tad bit. So just be careful with how you do it. I mean, there's lots of little tips and tools you can utilize, but, the idea is to get coverage. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure you do the right thing. But if you can choose, indemnity plans all day long. You got anything to add to that, Rich?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I have a client right now that has been paying into a policy for 25 years diligently, and there are some things all of a sudden they're surprising her that they're not covering, or they're just messing with her. I mean, they're just causing a lot of aggravation and stress. Because I read her policy and they do cover it, but now they changed the rule, right? So she's on a redemption plan.
Why don't we cover stuff pretty quick here? You guys have a lot of really good questions. You submitted a lot of questions prior to this, so please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email Rich, email myself, or just go to realinvestmentadvice.com. Go to ask a question. We'll have an advisor get right back to you. You can also follow us at realinvestmentadvice.com, RIAadvisors.com. Obviously, we're on AM 700 if you are in Houston, Texas, from 6 to 7 a.m. Or go to the Real Investment Show on YouTube. We'd love to have you guys there. If you haven't subscribed there, go subscribe. Tell your friends. And this may be something that doesn't pertain to you, or maybe you already have long-term care. But share this with somebody who needs some help or just a little bit of guidance. We do a lot of different topics ranging from long-term care, Social Security, Medicare, housing and retirement, even bigger, broader picture, kind of bigger webinars or even in-person events from time to time. So, if you have questions or you want us to, discuss a specific topic, please let us know. We'll try to fit it in the calendar, or we can, have somebody discuss that one-on-one. But Rich, let's jump in. So we've talked, some of these questions are really good. But, what about somebody what age are you too old to go out and try to get long-term care? It seems to be a question that keeps popping up.
Well, they're saying now,
say don't even go for it.
Once you're in your late 60s, early 70s, you're going to be priced out. I mean, it just may not be affordable at all. Now, what may be affordable is a hybrid policy, but a traditional policy is going to be cost prohibitive. So before age 65 is when you really want to start that. Now, I have a lot of people that are married to younger spouses and getting their spouses insured. So in their 50s, and those costs are coming in pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But once you hit 68, 69, 70 years old, and most likely you're going to have an issue that you can't underwrite properly. I think the sweet spot is between 50 and 60. That's what I see from all the years of experience. I have people that do it even when they're younger, and that's okay because they're ultra paranoid. And I'm like, well, at least they're doing it. But I think once you're at 50 to 55, that's your sweet spot to really start putting the numbers.
I agree.
Down.
I mean, and I think, it used to be that you had to wait till, there's 45 or 40 years of age to do so. I think if look, you can afford it and you can put it within the financial plan and you have that hierarchy of savings, as we discussed earlier, that's great. Go for it. I think it's not a bad thing to go ahead and get out there and attain, because the sooner you get it, the less likely you're going to have those pre-existing conditions, other ailments that pop up as we age. And so you're going to be more insurable.
Well, and before 50,
get much cheaper premiums.
Right. And before 50, though, you might be paying for your children. You know, there are people who are 50s that have young kids. Life insurance would be your answer, and you could add a rider. So don't discount riders, but understand you get oversold riders because you pay for riders, like additions to, like add-ons, like when you buy a car, right? And you're going to, oh, I get the satellite radio and I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. Well, those are all add-ons, right? You're going to have add-ons. So be careful with your riders because you don't need them all, but you might need some. And if you're buying life insurance for your children, say whole life policy is what I prefer. But if you're, whatever you're doing, look at riders. Look at your employer's benefits package. You know how many companies offer long-term care? And it most likely is portable if you leave the company, but people don't take it. I mean, my girlfriend did that. She has long-term care at work, and I don't need that. I don't need that.
Oh, man.
I'm 46 years old. I don't, what? Sign up. Because people never think they're going to have long-term care issue. They never think they're going to get disabled.
Yeah.
As planners, that's the first thing we think about, right? I mean, that's why we're planners. That's the thing we think about is what can actually derail you is a risk that you can't anticipate, but I can plan for. So, yeah, you can still do it, but 50 to 60. And if you're employed, like I said, you can get long-term care at an affordable rate, even if you're 60.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that, one thing that we probably need to make a little bit clearer. So you mentioned the hybrid plan. And so really what that is, that's life insurance with a long-term care rider, but specifically used for long-term care. Life insurance component is typically, up to the premium that you paid for the policy, which you could do one time up front. You could do it on a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. There's a handful of different options typically with purchasing them. So a little bit each year, or just get it over with and done. Now, the great thing about that is that you know what you're paying for. There is typically a death benefit associated with that, even if you exhausted all of the long-term care benefits. And so, another thing, a question that we're getting, Rich, is like when we look at one of those hybrid policies, or any policy for that matter, you're typically picking the amount of years that you're going to have it. Is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years? Generally speaking, if somebody can afford it, we prefer to go out 5 or 6 years. Now, not everybody can afford that. Maybe something is better than nothing, or reducing the benefit and having it for that longer period of time may work as well. So you need to really work with your planner to get a very good understanding what works best for you and your household, because you're not going to be the same as your neighbor and vice versa. I think that's where people get in trouble.
Yeah. And what's cool about a hybrid plan is, one, the underwriting is not as onerous. Like I've had type 2 diabetes now for 7 years. My numbers are normal, but I've had it. So I have some other issues that I had, high blood pressure and all that. So I don't know. And my numbers look good. I probably can now qualify for regular underwriting, but the underwriting is more of a questionnaire to the hybrid, because what they're trying to get a handle on is your lifestyle. They want to know your lifestyle because they understand lifestyle is the biggest issue. So the underwriting might be less. The money that goes in, if you don't use it, goes to beneficiaries. You buy that amount that you pay every month doesn't go up. Whatever you're paying per month for that benefit, like I think my benefit is $200,000. And I pay the same amount every month. And that'll be for another 3 years. Once that's over, I've got this $200,000 benefit. And it's an indemnity plan. And I'm a planner, so I'm not going to overspend it if I need it. I am going to match up my expenses, but I'm going to do it to figure out how much I need to pull from that policy. And most people ask about taxes. Most long-term care plans are going to issue a tax form, a 1099 LTC, but they're not going to be taxable. The benefits are usually tax-free. And in some cases, premiums tax deductible. So there are generally if you're paying sometimes pre-tax, some of what you paid in will come out, but the actual benefit, the full amount is not going to be taxable.
Yeah.
So another question in California, everything's taxable.
Yeah.
So,
now you mentioned that you had some pre-existing conditions and you were able to actually qualify for that hybrid policy because it is easier underwriting.
because of why? I had this woman I talked to, she says, "You're the best person I ever talked to." I had 7 years of an A1C chart. Like, I do blood work every 6 months. So I had charts for everything that you said I had a problem with. And she understood from my lifestyle, my workout, my diet, that I was a good risk.
Yeah.
But
well, that's a big part about
I had
it.
the pre-existing conditions. I had the pre-existing conditions. So that still might have prevented me.
Yeah. I wouldn't let it deter you if you do have some conditions. I would certainly do so. They typically want to see, whereas traditional policy is going to want to go do blood work. They're going to do medical evaluation. Those hybrids generally don't do that, but what they are doing, they are looking at the lifestyle. They are looking at prescriptions, any pre-existing conditions. And so you'll want to have a good understanding of what all that looks like. Typically you have somebody kind of give you a chart, a checklist that says, here's what we're going to need, here's how we do it. And then that phone conversation, maybe anywhere from 10 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much information they need from you. But I wouldn't let it deter you. I would always, if this is something that you potentially need, I would always try to get it. So what do you say to the person who says, you know what, I'm going to self-insure by putting these funds aside every month. And it's going to grow because markets are going to go up over time, and I'll do better doing that. Because I do hear that from time to time as well. What do you think about that? And why don't you explain, so your policy, you're going to get $200,000 in benefits out of it. How much did you have to spend on it?
Well, is it a viable strategy? It is, but don't expect, if you're listening to traditional brokers that are telling you that you're going to get 10% a year in stock, right? So if your cost
every year compounded.
Yeah. So, but if you are going to put money into a separate account that's earning something over time, and you have the discipline to do it, that goes into your financial plan, Danny, to figure out what we would do is say, okay, you're going to set up this account and it's going to fund this goal. And then we'll see if there's a shortfall. So it depends on how you invest it. Are you going to be disciplined to pay it every month? So could it work? Yes. But if I have a $400,000, $500,000, say a $400,000, which could be for me and a spouse, that's a lot of money you're going to have to save. Insurance is like leverage. I pay $50,000 for what I'm doing for $200,000 worth of coverage. Right? I'm not going to get that kind of leverage in an investment. And if I do, I'm in crypto or something else and I can lose all my money. Right? So can that be part of your plan? Sure. Is it going to be fully covering what you would do from a leverage perspective that insurance would cover? Probably not.
Yeah.
But yes, it's not going to hurt because you're going to help to self-insure through that process, right? So you're going to go through a self-insure hierarchy. Can your spouse, are you married? Good thing. Spouse can help. Can you downsize or take a home equity line of credit or reverse mortgage, home equity conversion mortgage? Check it off. We can go through all these things to get to the bottom line. And if you say, listen, Rich, I'm going to put $1,000 a month into a blended allocation for 20 years. Okay. Let's see. It's going to help. But remember the leveraging effect of insurance, right? I pay my premiums into a whole life, say a term policy. I'm a young person. I pay $50 a month, $60 a month. I'm getting $500,000-$600,000. I'm not going to be able to save that. But if you're in that situation, sure, you could do both.
Can you use a HSA, health savings account, for long-term care premiums? Yes, you absolutely can. It can be a great way to utilize it. I love HSAs. New legislation potentially going to allow you to put more into it, which would be fantastic. Don't know if it'll get through. Not really confident in it, but it would be awesome making the premiums go up, or the contributions you could put to an HSA go from $3,650 all the way to $12,000 per individual. That'd be awesome. If you have a SEP IRA and a Roth IRA, can you incorporate this into your life insurance plan? You can, but you got to remember the taxability on what that looks like, right? So, I mean, everything from a legacy intent for life insurance purposes would be, it's great. But remember that life insurance is going to go to your heirs, and they're not going to pay much taxes on it. Whereas the SEP IRA and Roth IRAs, they're going to have, with the Secure Act 2.0, there is a new RMD distribution drawdown for non-spousal beneficiaries. So you do have a time frame. You have to take it out within that 10 years. No, I'm not always, wouldn't be the number one thing for that.
Yeah, we're all going to move in with Lance, Rob. I'm planning on that too.
If you can get over the moat.
Yeah, if you can get over the fence, the moat, the dogs, the guns, good luck. It's a compound. Alligators. I told him, zombie allocate, if there's a zombie apocalypse, we all get to Lance's house. The issue is whether he's going to let us in. Probably not. Now, the one thing about HSAs and long-term care premiums, you can pay your premiums, but keep in mind, there are limits to how much of those benefits are going to be taxable versus tax-free. In other words, if I'm using that for long-term care coverage expenses, I have a cap that goes up every year that you have to be aware of, and it's age-based. Like I'm 40 to 50, 50 to 60. So you got to be careful. Not all of what you take out can be completely tax-free. But yes, you can use it, to Danny's point. The one thing when someone asked about what policy is right for me, and that we don't know. That's the problem. You don't know what kind of policy is right for you until you understand all the things we talked about in the beginning. Your health, your plan. You got to go through this whole thing to figure out, well, do I need a hybrid policy? Or do I need a full-blown long-term care policy? Do I have it offered at work, which is the no-brainer, and I just bypass it because I'm never going to need long-term care? So the plan or the planning and your health helps you to understand the type of policy you will need, along with some of your preferences. Like my preference is to make sure I leave money for my daughter if I don't use the policy. So I do have a beneficiary on those.
And thank you guys for joining. If you do have more specific questions or you feel like we did not get to the information that you wanted, or you have more specific questions about maybe what's right for you guys, don't hesitate to reach out. Let us know what we can do to either, one, help you if you'd like to schedule a meeting for somebody to visit with you, or two, you just have some questions, or you have topics you want us to address in the future. We would love to do that. We know it's
Great
a busy Saturday. Everybody's busy. It's a beautiful day here in Houston. Hope it stays that way. We'll see what happens. We're off to the ballpark, Rich. I don't know about you.
I'm not. Great questions, by the way. I would tell you, you all did really great. A lot of wonderful questions and insights. So appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your Saturday. We'll see you guys soon. Next event, Rich, April 13th.
Social Security. Going to be talking about what are the new things for 2023 that you may not have thought of.
All right. Hey, go sign up, realinvestmentadvice.com. We'll see y'all soon. Have a great weekend.